Hey everybody, welcome in.
Well, hang on. You're
What?
supposed to be live.
I'm supposed to be live. We'll see if I am. Chat will tell me if I'm live. Yes? No?
No, you're like frozen. We always have a technical glitch.
The new camera?
That could be.
Well, Tony says we're live, which is great, so I'll roll with it. Awesome Dave has stood up a new camera today, which we borrowed from Devin Nash. I see Edison notes he's here because of Devin. You're frozen, but we can hear you just fine.
You guys keep talking.
All right, so he'll fix the video. We're trying a new picture. Good audio, not so much video. Great. Well, that's okay. We'll be invisible. I'm here with frozen Ken Myer, who's my guest tonight. And I'm Ethan Evans, the Easy Coach. I know a lot of people have come in from Devin's stream where I had the chance to be a guest for most of Sunday. And Devin will be here in about 10 days on June 6th. We're going to do a show together on extreme ownership. So thanks, Milo. Welcome in. So a couple things I always cover early in the show. First, we do questions. We do a question and answer. It says it fixed. So whatever you did fixed it. Chat's confirming we're back. We do a question and answer format for most of this show. So for all the Twitch natives, we have an extension on the stream where you can ask questions. And so you can either do that by going to the webpage and asking questions through the link that just showed up in chat, or you can go to the extension and either add a question, which the moderators will approve, or you can upvote any existing question that's there, and we already have one in. So we'll jump on that in a second. But in the meantime, I want to introduce my guest. Ken Myer shares a position with me on the board of the Washington Trails Association. That's the charity that any proceeds from the stream beyond equipment costs support. And as moderation helpfully just threw in, the views I express here don't represent Amazon or Twitch. Standard social media disclaimer. I'm just speaking for myself. Ken doesn't work for either Amazon or Twitch, so he doesn't have to do that. But with that, what I'd like to do, Ken, you evolved into being a professional interim CEO. Tell us a little bit about how you got to this job where you go fill in for missing chief executives.
Well, first, thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. Looking forward to the conversation. I stumbled into it. I had finished a job, and I was asked by a friend if I would join his business, and I said, you know, I need a break, but how about if I come in on an interim basis? And he said...
You lost the screen up here, Awesome Dave.
Awesome
Just to
Dave
keep
is
you
up.
going. Awesome Dave's not having an awesome day, but that's all right. We're still live.
We're still live. So I said, could I come in and do it as a project? And the answer was sure. And long story short, I did that project. I then did a second one. And after the second one, I said, I really enjoy this kind of work. And so I stumbled into it. Short answer is I stumbled into it and ended up very much enjoying it. And so that's what I ended up choosing to do.
All right. And how many times roughly have you dropped into companies?
I've done this for 5.5, 6 years. I've done 7 engagements.
7 engagements. So,
Yep. And they last between 4 months and 6 months. The longest was 8 months.
Okay. So, chat and audience, you will have to fill us in on some questions. We won't get to those yet, but it's a question-driven show. So if you're not using the extension or the link, it could be moderation struggling to approve them since we're having technical glitches. They'll let me know. But in the meantime, go ahead and vote and add questions. So one of the things you told me that I thought was pretty interesting is that you normally take one of these roles on 24 to 48 hours of notice.
Yes.
Yeah. So how does that work?
Somebody will reach out to me. It could be a member of the board, a venture capitalist, and if it's a venture-backed company, or an accountant or a lawyer who is serving the company, who knows that I do this, and they'll get in touch. I'll talk with someone who is in a position to potentially bring me on. And most cases, the former CEO is already gone or quickly moving out. And so sometimes I get a chance to talk to them before they leave. Sometimes I don't. And it's usually within a day or two that I need to come in.
Okay. And is it fair to say that Oh, thank you, Penny Pickles the dog. I love that you came in and rated. Welcome. Is it normally the case that you would have that these are, shall we say, rough situations, like CEOs leaving on short notice without going into details? I'm assuming.
Well, the way I describe it is like you parachute into a situation, and sometimes you're parachuting into a green meadow, and there's a stream running through it, kind of metaphorically, and other times it's a raging forest fire. It depends. So each one is very different.
Okay.
Sometimes it's been a forest fire. Sometimes it's been pretty calm. But no question, people are, when a leader leaves, people are wondering, what do they know that I don't know?
Ah, yeah. If they're getting out of Dodge, do I need to?
Yes,
Yeah?
that may be a question. If somebody is very allegiant to that leader and that leader leaves, then you are worried that somebody's going to go with them out. So there's this
Lotem B,
period.
thanks for the cheer.
There's this period of time after you come in where you're trying to figure out, is another shoe going to drop really
Is
quickly?
another shoe going to drop? Okay. So the question that's been in my mind the whole time, and then we'll go to audience questions, so keep putting them in. The bits play fine even though the cam is frozen. Really sorry about that, guys. Our production staff is working on the frozen cam. We tried out a new camera today. We actually took Devin Nash's recommendation on a cam. Of course it worked well behind the scenes. So somebody says, so it's in the cam, not the video. Well, we'll find out. We're putting up our old camera. So we'll have this fixed shortly. Meanwhile, it's a podcast. And no, Devin is not to blame. Well, maybe he will be. No, we won't do that. But for now, we'll podcast, and you'll see us soon. Yeah, unexpected podcast. Exactly. So with that in mind, though, my question for you would be, what's the toughest situation you ever dropped into?
Without naming names?
Without naming names, yeah. Acme Corp,
Acme
like
Corp. Yeah, we'll call
Wile E. Coyote.
Thank you very much. That's a good use of the word Acme. I came into a business, small, was around for a couple years. It was is a startup, tech startup. And the reason the CEO left was not because they wanted to go somewhere else or the board wanted a change. There was a real concern amongst the team about this leader.
Okay.
And that was what precipitated the change. And so I'm coming into an organization in which there's the team is pretty traumatized.
Yeah.
With what they've gone through, and are concerned about who's going to come in next. The great news was they came together and banded together really well, and so in that situation, each situation you're looking to figure out what is the best role that I can play here, and in some, and then we can talk about other opportunities, but on this
Saying
one,
it's good now. Thank you, chat. Very helpful. Fixed, working, got it. And yeah, Life Coach 724, we got that it was frozen. That was a problem we just solved. So thank you.
Team is stressed. Financial systems are unknown. Where we are financially isn't crystal clear.
Wow. So not even knowing how much is in the bank.
We knew there was
some.
We knew there was enough in the bank, but how much? And there were some agreements that had been in the works that we probably didn't want to make. So it was a pretty. The team was in fairly tough shape, although very cohesive with each other.
Oh, that's good.
They were tight with each other.
So, starting to bring this back then to the question, because we set up the stream that we would talk about how to enter new situations. Yeah. Maybe before we go specific, take us through generically a little bit when you're coming in like this. And for the stream, I'll point out another challenge in Ken's role is he shows up with a team that's not expecting him, that may be in a rough spot, and that also knows he's leaving. And not when, but you're announced as interim. right?
Yep.
So he's announced, and that's a really tough spot to lead from. It's a really tough spot to do anything from. We are going to talk about what it's like to how you in the audience can join or start a new job and how to do that well. But it would be super hard to start a new job well and try and join a team if it was announced like, hey, here's Ethan. He's going to be with us 3 months and then he's going to be gone. Yeah, and I love the questions coming in. Thanks for that. So, working though from that though, like, what's your generic framework? And then we'll jump to audience questions.
So, not surprisingly, the first few hours, literally the first few hours, are some of the most important because it's key that I build the first connections of trust with this team. And that means I have to be really transparent about what I'm hoping I can help them do, listen to them around what they're concerned about. They're, when you look somebody in the eye and you have a conversation with them, pretty quickly you can get a sense of whether they're authentic and whether they're genuine and they truly want to help you in the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first few hours are core to that. And then the first several days and week right after that, trying to understand what's on fire first. So what's the most important thing in their mind I have to go work on? It could be that somebody is thinking about leaving. It could be they're in the middle of a negotiation on a deal and they need to close it. It could be any number of things. So we try to figure out, I work with them to try to figure out what's most important in the next 48 hours that I need to attend to. And then as I then just meet with everybody and just listen.
Okay.
And through that process, then determine, is there a leadership team I'm working with? Does a leadership team need to be put together? Generally, I have a leadership team I'm working with. And then in the first few weeks, the real goal is to get some alignment about where are we trying to get to and what does success look like. I mean, the first few weeks are around making sure the boat's pointed in the right direction.
Okay.
And that is probably more important than anything else, because if the boat's going like this, nobody's happy. But even if the direction is not perfect, if you get the boat in one direction, that calms things down.
All right.
And then you can figure out how you need to tune the boat direction.
Well, I have to say, you wouldn't know this, but you're a natural on the show, because when I'm doing the show alone, my hands are everything, and I'm always... a viewer observed it's some psychology thing called knife hands.
Oh.
And it indicates a certain background from a psychological profile viewpoint to use knife hands. And you brought out the knife hands.
Is it good or bad?
Well, it's indicative of a certain mindset. He had done some reading on how the FBI profiles people.
Oh.
And it tells you your Myers-Briggs type.
And my name is Myer. And so
there you go. Oh, there you go. Even better. So let's go ahead and take the first question here, which is, you're a CEO, but what advice do you have for starting an entry-level job? So someone who's making a transition into a new role, what is the advice to anyone coming into a new role, how to do that well? And we could talk about this for hours, by the way, so we're going to...
Well, it's clear that if you're in an entry role, you're already in a learning mindset, right? You want to get into this space, so you're enthusiastic, you're excited, you want to learn. I think kind of being maybe wise about how you learn. That is, as you go into the new job, start collecting the questions that you have that you want to learn about, because it's not clear. And instead of maybe seek to have someone assigned to you or working with you as a partner, a mentor, and if they don't do that, go look around and find the person who was the nicest to you when you first came in, and see if they'll spend some time with you. But you want to get connected to a couple folks, and then instead of interrupting them 100 times a day with questions, which some people are okay with, see if you can't collect your thoughts so that you use their time well. Second thing, so use your peers as best you can to learn. Second thing is, to the best of your ability, understand from the person you're going to work for what success looks like. And they may tell you that when you come in, but if they don't, it's really incumbent upon you to go to them and say, it's 6 months from now or a year from now, and I did a really good job. What did I do? Like, what does success look like? I think that's really important. I think that they know that you're experimenting and you're going to maybe fail at some things because you're learning. Being okay with that, admitting when you don't know something, admitting you messed something up is much better than trying to show yourself to be like, I'm learning this and I'm becoming an expert fast. Your work will show what you're learning. So it's better to be a bit humble and admit where you're not doing as well as you could, and asking questions and supporting your team, helping them to be successful. Those kinds of things will get you off to a good start.
So something we get a lot from the audience is, what do you do if you have a bad boss? I guess if you're not fitting into a new environment, because a lot of people struggle. We have the good luck of being in executive roles, usually with highly motivated teams. Not everyone in the stream is in the same fortunate situations. And it's hard to stretch from what we do to advise well. But if you find yourself in a world where not everyone is equally motivated and some people are just punching the clock, how do you shine without antagonizing? Is there any way to do that where, like, the eager beaver isn't so welcome because, this is a 38-hour-a-week job, kid, don't mess it up for the rest of us?
Yeah, in the early part of your professional life, you have to swallow a lot more of what you may not put up with later. You have to ask yourself, what's your tolerance for that? And I don't think you should go beyond what you're comfortable with. So if it really reaches the point where you say, this is not the way I want to live my life.
Hey, Shadow, welcome in. Sorry, we just had a big raid from our lead moderator, Shadow Fox, who brought her audience and another 50 people. So welcome to the stream. I'll do a quick reintroduction. I'm Ethan Evans. I'm the Easy Coach. We have a bunch of people here now from Shadow Fox. We have a big audience that's come in from Devon Nash. We're glad to have you all here. And we're here tonight with Ken Myer, who's a professional interim CEO, which, what the heck is that? What it means is, about 5 years ago, he transitioned out of his long-term career, which we haven't actually heard about yet. And I saw somebody ask about that in chat. He transitioned out of his long-term career and started taking roles where he drops into companies that have lost their CEOs. He's very politic about it, but sometimes under bad situations. And on 24 to 48 hours of notice, he needs to take over and try and lead a team that knows he's leaving. So this is like some pretty good handicapping. So with the big audience here, I'll re-explain the way we do questions, because I've seen some people ask the questions in chat. And if you're new to the stream, we actually have an extension on the stream built by Awesome Dave, my producer, where you can ask the questions there, and then visitors can upvote the questions, and we take them in the order asked. So we were just finishing up the question, what's the advice if you're entering an entry-level role? As opposed to the two of us who are entering executive roles, and Ken, who drops in obviously at the top of the stack. Although everybody has a boss and he has a board or somebody who hired him.
That's right.
But I think what I would add to his answer on entry level, try to do something good early. Even if it's buy everyone coffee or donuts, you never get oh, hey, Devin, great to see you here. You never get a second chance to make that first impression. And so I would highly recommend, if you have a chance to come in and make a first impression, a good one, that will set the tone. Because the other option is make no impression or make a negative impression. So I would say if you come in and make that good first impression, and that can mean just take any piece of work that needs to be done and get it done week one. Get it done day one if you can. We were also talking about some of the viewers. We were just on the question before Shadow Fox showed up. And again, welcome to all the people from the Fox Den. We were just talking about the challenge that what if you work in a workplace where hard work isn't appreciated? And this is something actually Shadow's followers know very well from her history to the degree she shared it. But she was in a role previous in her life where hard work wasn't really appreciated and it actually threatened some people. So in a role like that, what would be your final words on how do you deal where, and I have other viewers that they share that. They're in government or they're in sort of slow growth, rigid environments, and they get pushback for upsetting the apple cart.
Well, you have to ask, do the people that you're upsetting the apple cart for like you doing that? So that's one question I'd ask.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who you're trying to benefit.
Right.
But, I think, and I know this sounds easy to say, but I've lived this since I was 21 years old, and that is, I want to get into a role. When I'm working that role, if I'm not happy, I'm going to start looking for something else and start looking for somebody inside that business I want to work with, but I'm going to do it from a job, preferably. So it means gritting your teeth sometimes. I don't have
There's no silver bullet. Well, it's good. I never had a silver bullet for this. We often get the foreheads in chat because when we say just go get a better job, it sounds easy. It is very hard. Back on our bookshelf behind us, we have What Color is Your Parachute? It's one of the canonical books on job search. If you're working for a crappy boss, which does happen, yeah, Fred the Free, I do learn fast. I did learn some of the memes. So that's thanks to Devin Nash and his stream educating this weekend. So you can throw up the boomers next. I'm passing along the knowledge because I warned Ken about boomers. So there you go. Anyway, we've beaten that question to death. So if you have more questions, keep voting them up. But we'll go ahead and move to the next question, which has a bunch of votes. And what we have there is, as an executive, how do you strike a balance between delegating work to your staff or managing work yourself? And this is a great one for you.
Well, you do both. When it comes to managing work myself, I have a job to do as the CEO. There are elements to my job, whether it be making sure the team is aligned in a certain direction and helping make that happen, whether it's going on a sales call with a big prospective customer or working with a supplier or talking to the board. I have a job, and a set of jobs is like there's a job description for a CEO. And so I should be focusing on that, and everything else should be done by everybody else in the business. And so, if I'm doing things that they should be doing, I'm doing the wrong job.
Okay. So say a little more about that if you don't mind. What's the balance? When do you delegate, or how do you decide delegate this or do it?
I don't think in those terms.
Okay, great.
I think in the terms of my job is primarily first to align everybody, get us all agreeing on the boat direction, which we talked about. Where is the boat going? Then, if we think that's the right direction for the boat, what is the journey we're going on, and what are the milestones of success to get to land, if that's the metaphor, right? So we identify some handfuls of things that we say we got to go do really well. And people say, and we do that together. It's not me coming out and saying this is what we do. I start by asking them, and my job is really to collect it and bring it back to them and say, "Is this what you just said?" Because, and then they say, "Yep, that's what we said." And then I add my own 2 cents, and then I might say, "We should probably think about this, this, and this as well, shouldn't we?" And they usually, hopefully, say, "Yeah, we should." So the whole process is to get us agreeing on what it's going to take to get to that place. Now, then we say, okay, who's going to sign up to do that stuff? And I'll have a piece of it, but most of it is done by the team. And so my job is to get everybody in the direction with a set of things we got to get done, put the systems in place so we're tracking, making sure we know, but not as a carrot, not as a stick or a carrot, but as a way of just knowing. And then you let them go. And then my job is to figure out when are they missing resources they need, when do they need me to make a decision if that's applicable. So, yeah.
So that's a very facilitative answer, which I totally get. I think some people in chat experience maybe more directive bosses, order givers.
Oh, yeah.
So I listened closely to what you said. At no point did you ever say, sometimes I just tell people what they need to do or tell them to do a thing. Do you never do it?
So if you're earlier in your career
Yes.
and you are brand new to a role, it wouldn't be unusual for your boss to say, you need to go do this, this, and this as you go, right? But as a CEO, I don't tell people what to do.
Okay.
I just don't do that.
Okay.
Now,
Well,
unless-
don't come work at Amazon.
So hold on. If push comes to shove,
Uh-huh.
then I will probably put that in the form of a question to them, not as a directive of what they should do. I'll be
Okay.
asking them some hard questions about some things.
Okay. So you would ask something like, don't you really think closing the Acme account is your highest priority?
Correct.
Which is the nice way of saying,
No, you know what I would do? I would actually, no, I wouldn't do it because that's
Okay.
passive aggressive.
okay, all right, good.
If they're not focused on the right kinds of things, in my mind, I would ask them about those things. Well, what do you think about this, this, and this? How important are those things? Because to me, they're really important. So do we need to have do we need to talk about what's important?
Okay.
So now,
I'm learning now in case I ever have to work for Ken, if he asks me, do I understand what's important? That's a sign that I
Well,
don't.
again,
No, that's
this
fair.
is we could talk about at length about when somebody isn't performing well.
Okay.
That should be that is a whole thing we could talk about.
Yeah.
We started this off with how do you decide what you do yourself and what you delegate?
Okay, yeah. And that's fair. And your point was you let the team figure out their delegation. At the executive level, you get everybody agreed on a direction, and then you see who signs up to what, which is essentially no.
Sorry, we get a direction.
Yeah.
We get a set of milestones to get that
Yeah,
direction.
getting it.
And really specific, like what does the success look like? What do we
Yeah.
need to go get done? Naturally, the functions in the business are going to have responsibility for that. So, I mean, it's going to be pretty clear. If we need to find 3 new resellers, the sales team's going to take care of that. If we need to finish a product by this date, Dev has that. And so 90% of the people know what their role is, but we talk about that.
Right.
Because if they're signing up for that, they need to feel comfortable with how we're saying what we're going to go do.
Okay.
So then once that's done, then you pretty much know, let's say 75% of what everybody's going to be doing most every day.
Okay.
And you leave a latitude for all that unpredictable stuff that comes up every day. So you never schedule 100% of people's time. You schedule enough and keep a bandwidth for everything that happens every day you don't anticipate.
Perfect. All right, so we've got a lot of good questions here. Thank you, and everybody, keep rolling them in. We can take this conversation wherever you, the audience, direct, within bounds. We're not going to talk about anything inappropriate to Ken's background. Next question is, what, in your opinion, are the most important interpersonal skills a person can learn?
I think it's really important to be aware of how you are affecting other human beings. So being self-aware of how you affect other people is a super important interpersonal skill. And that means having your radar on, being sensitive to how people are reacting to you, understanding how they're reacting. So I think being self-aware about your impact to other people. I think another really good interpersonal skill is getting good at asking questions. And this took me a long time to learn, is that I try to now lead with questions versus kind of telling. And so I think to the degree you can ask people questions and as a way of building trust is valuable.
I think Hot Dog here has a good point. He's calling that emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think emotional intelligence is a super important interpersonal skill.
Okay. How do you learn it? Like be nicer is like not very useful advice. So.
Well, I think there's a couple ways. One is if you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a husband or a wife or a close friend, someone who you can trust, who can give you honest feedback about their view of how self-aware you are, is helpful. It's a tough question to ask somebody, but you can ask somebody you trust. I think the other is if you lead with questions, you're naturally going to be more sensitive than if you want to talk about something or tell somebody. So I think leading with questions help you to be more open to what other people think, and less focused on making your point. I think emotional intelligence also means being wise about how you use your emotions. And, I think we all are on a various scale of being super calm, being super extroverted, somewhere in between. It's part of our personality. It's largely what we were born with. I think what you can do then is just be sensitive to when you are in the extreme of either.
Okay.
And that'd be helpful.
Okay. So I'll add to that for the audience. I would say interpersonal skills are hard to learn. We've had a previous show about getting the most out of your performance review, and I would completely agree with what Ken has said about you have to get your feedback. You have to take feedback well, and that can be tough because feedback can hurt. It can be threatening. Guniash, thank you. I'm glad you liked the answer. And yes, asking a significant other can be eye-opening, can be relationship damaging, depending on how honest. Just be careful what you ask for. You may get it. Yeah. Your SO usually knows you very well. But if you ask other people for feedback, I've told this story before, but I once had a very senior attorney in our company ask me for feedback on how she was doing her job. And as soon as I started to answer her, she started to refute everything I said. So, of course, I learned a couple things right away. Number one, she wasn't really too genuine, or at least wasn't able to take it. And number two, why bother? At that point, if I had feedback for her again, whether solicited or not, I wouldn't offer it. Like if she had asked me again, I would have just shrugged and smiled and said, no, everything's great. You're awesome. Because what the hell's the point? So with that in mind, I do think taking feedback well, wherever you get it, is how you are able to grow in interpersonal skills. There's another piece I use, I'll run by you. For what I do, I find for any two people to interrelate, there usually has to be some adjustment. Whether it's how we speak, how we act, how we work together, there has to be some adjustment in styles. Yes. So I've purposely cultivated the realization that I can't control your style. I can ask. I can say something to you like, could you try to be a little more direct? I sometimes feel like you're not really coming out with what you want. Mm-hmm. And maybe you'll take that feedback and maybe you'll do it. But I can only control me. And so really I need to be very good at adapting. So I call this, thick skin, it says here. I need to be able to adapt my style to others, and I call this my chameleon style of management. So when I need to be green, I'm green. When I need to be brown, I'm brown. Mm-hmm. How do you think about something like that?
Agree. When I take on a new role, and let's say I have a leadership team that I'm going to be working with to lead the team, I'll sit down with each one of them, and we'll go have a cup of coffee, or I like to walk and talk.
Okay.
I like to get out of the building, not sitting in an office and talk about important things. And I have a common set of questions I'll ask them to try to figure out how to work best with them, because they are each different. So
okay. I bet the audience would love to know the question list. You might have been just about to go into that.
Oh, yeah. I first get kind of the basics of it, like how long you've been here, what roles have you had. I just get kind of what got you to where we are today, so I can understand a little history. Then I say, I try to understand what they're working on now, and do they think that that's a good priority for them, or do they think that needs to change? Because they may be working on stuff that the previous leader gave them, and so kind of figure out is their work satisfying and is it what they want to be working on? And then I ask them things like, do you have any pet hot buttons I need to know about? Is there something that would get you grumpy fast? So that would be an example. Somebody would say, yeah, managers like to walk around and manage.
Yeah.
And they'll stop into my cubicle or my work area and they'll say, hey, what's going on? And I do that 2 or 3 times a day and it drives me nuts. If you want to meet with me, let's just set up some time and I'll talk to you, but I hate a million introductions. Or, I hate surprises about things that aren't working well. So that question comes up all the time. I ask that.
So like, what's your pet peeve?
What's your pet peeve?
Yeah.
How do I avoid kind of, making you grumpy unintentionally? How do I not stumble into something stupid? I ask about their goal, their aspirations. Where would they like to be? I ask them, if you were in my shoes, given what I'm supposed to do here, and you could wave a wand and do 1 or 2 things. What are the most important things you would suggest I do? And so those kinds of things.
Do you ever find that they give you things that I've used that question, like the magic wand, what would you do? What do you then do if someone says something that you don't feel you can do? Because you've kind of asked, and how does that work?
I say, look, I'm just collecting right now. I'm going to ask this of everybody, and then I'm going to put it together, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to try to find the themes that most of you all agree on, because, there may be some one-offs, but let's figure out the big things we need to worry about. That hasn't happened, I disagree. You had mentioned that in my role, it's, I'm only there for a couple months. So,
period of time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that would prompt someone to say, well, why would I follow this guy? I'll just wait until the new person comes in.
Now we're getting real. I wondered when you'd get to this. I'll just wait this guy out.
Well, no, very few people do that.
Okay.
Surprisingly, you would think that maybe some number of people would say, forget this guy. I'll just wait till this woman or the next leader comes in.
Right.
That doesn't tend to happen.
Why do you think that is? I have my own theories. But...
Because they are still committed to the business. If they were not committed to the business, because that doesn't, first of all, you can't hide that behavior. so they're going to let me know that.
Even if they don't come out and say I'm blowing you off, it shows up pretty quickly.
It's not hard to read. And I think that there's this opportunity when in interim to make some things happen that they think are now back on the table. And so what you find when you do this kind of role is there's some things you can do very quickly that are no-brainers. Yeah, let's just do that. Yeah. And clean up a lot of stuff that were like sacred cows that you couldn't touch. And then there are certain things where you say, boy, I can't decide that. We need the next leader to decide that.
Okay. So that's interesting, what you put off and what you don't.
Correct.
But I think we've beaten this particular question to death, which is great, going all the way back to the most important interpersonal skills. Really, the interpersonal skill, is nobody wants to work with difficult people, and so try not to be someone else's difficult person. And I think listening is the most commonly quoted. Yeah. Ken gets at that through asking questions. It's definitely, for all my friends who are in chat, they know very well, it's a growth area for me. It's not my strong suit. But
there's a great book on this that's this thin.
Oh, yeah?
By a guy named Edward Schein. I recommend it. It's called Humble Inquiry. It's a great little book. This guy's a guru in kind of leadership stuff from years ago. If this is gray...
All right, so he's a boomer, like
way boomer.
Okay,
but it's called Humble Inquiry.
Humble Inquiry. All right, so we'll check that out. Yeah, and there's a question here. And we have some folks in chat who say it's a fantastic book. And now Shadow's added the Amazon link, which is also great. It'll have to go on my list. I love short books, and you made the gesture that it's really short.
It is very short,
which is fantastic. All right, let's go to the next question. So this question is long. Being an interim CEO is much, much tougher than someone who climbs up the ladder and understands everything about the company. Certainly true. Could you please enlist some of these skills probably lists some of these skills and how you learn these that lets you fill in a gap like that on short notice. So I think a way to think about that, you take it any way you want, is what is transportable, given that you don't have the context of the company.
Yeah. So most of what I do, I call horizontal, meaning it applies to almost every company. It's not vertical like. It's not for the gaming industry or, certain skills you bring to the table as a CEO are vertical skills. You know the industry, you know this kind of business model or whatever. But a lot of what you do as a leader is horizontal, and I learned these from being older and having a lot of jobs and great leaders that I stole from. I mimic them.
Yeah.
And so some of these things are the importance of building trust. Fundamentally, you're as a leader, you're a strategist, but you're also a motivator. And if you want to motivate other human beings, you have to build trust with them. And you can't build trust with them unless you know where they're coming from. And then, so a lot of this is around making connections with the team so that they can feel comfortable being honest. And if they can feel comfortable being honest, then we are getting closer and closer to the truth of where we are. And if we can get closer to the truth, then we can start having fun with some experiments about how to deal with that truth. So I think this whole command and control thing needs to just be flipped on its head completely. I'm just not a fan of it.
So what's the alternative? Because command and control, you may know, I come from a command and control company. Amazon, to this day, without saying too much about it, is very much a command and control structure. And while most of you probably have an idea what that means, it basically means the boss says what to do, or at least makes final decisions, and people have input to them, but they're also expected to play their part and do what they're asked. So it's not my favorite either, and I think it's not like a military level. Command and control literally was originated as a military structure, is how it's understood. And Awesome Dave, who's a retired major, and just was
it's great.
Yeah, he's a retired major, led 400 people, I think, in his command. Wow. That's very much. But even there, I understand for the military, in the end, I think you would say, and the audience may struggle, some of them to believe, CEOs can't really tell people what to do. At the end of the day, people got to want to do it.
Yeah. It doesn't mean I believe in anarchy or not discipline or any of that. I just think that the thing is, command and control is much faster to get to where you want to go. There's no question about it. And there are certain environments where, and so I shouldn't have said I don't believe in command and control. If my house is on fire, I want the fire department to be in command and control. If someone is attacking my neighborhood, I want the police to be in command and control. It's the context that determines what leadership style works.
Okay, fair.
So command and control is perfect for certain situations. The question is it perfect for others? It is faster to get to where you want to go, generally. I just think it's worth taking a little bit more time and negotiating to where you want to go. Because then people really own it, and you really get their ideas out on the table. If they think that at the end of the day their job is to just do what I want them to do, then why would they contribute any new idea?
Well, that's what we call learned helplessness, which if Devin's still hanging out in chat, he'll love that. He's probably heard it, but if not, it's a phrase we'll talk about next time you and I are together. Learned helplessness is if I become the oracle giving you the answers, if I'm always in command, you just learn, well, don't bring up my ideas. You're just going to say no to them. Show up and ask Oracle Ken, Oracle Ethan, there's Devin, what do you want from me? Like, what am I supposed to do? And then that makes me the single point of all failure, right? So that's very much. And Chad asks, is that an attempt to identify new leaders? I'm not sure what you mean. I guess what I certainly don't want is to be the person that's always the oracle and the answer. for everyone, because I don't have all the answers, but I also become a bottleneck. If I'm sick, if I'm out, I have to be in every meeting. And so one of the challenges with command and control is it doesn't scale very well. It can scale in a military sense with a hierarchy, but generally you're not getting the best from people.
Well, and the thing that I would always be asking myself in that environment is, if I didn't have this title, would they still follow me?
Okay.
I want them to follow or be part of I want us to work together to go do something, not because of the title that I have.
Right. So it's a good question. I agree with you. Hopefully people follow you voluntarily. That's one of the great things about Twitch. It's a meritocracy.
Yeah.
There's 10,000 other channels on right now.
Right.
The audience that's here wants to hear us, and they're following us voluntarily. Since Devin's one of our hosts, yes, I love this concept. This creates negative feedback loops in a lot of people, because the more failure, the more feeling you can't influence things. And that's if, I think what he means there is if you're always getting rejected in your ideas, it just becomes a negative feedback loop and you're out.
Yeah.
And I will say, being transparent, early in my career, I was managing a friend, and that friend, it wasn't that early in my career, unfortunately, but it was a while ago. And yeah, it also works in the positive. If you take somebody's idea and run with it, they will then give you a ton of ideas. Like once they see you accepting feedback, they're all about it. But early in my career, I had a friend who wrote about me in feedback at Amazon. He wrote, I've thought about my one-on-ones with Ethan. And Ethan is great. When I come into a one-on-one in his office, he always closes his computer. He pushes back from his desk. He gives me his undivided attention. He listens to me. And when he's done listening, he says, well, that's a good idea, but, and then tells me something different. And that really hurt. That's that point about the way you get better is you take feedback. Mm-hmm. But I realized he was right. That I was listening to him, but always trying to add to it. And I had to learn that just because I had some improvement, that would take away his ownership. Mm-hmm. And so I try not to do that. Anything else you'd add on this question of what you learned that's transportable or
I think that's...
You nailed it?
Yep.
All right, sweet. So keep the questions coming in. We're going to jump to the next one. We did touch on this earlier, but for anybody who's not added questions or voted on them, you can use the extension or the web page. It is moderated, and so it'll take a minute for your new questions to show up, but then other people can vote on them. So our next question here is, how do you like to break the ice with your new staff? And you did already talk about taking them for a walk and asking them questions. But other than that, like that crucial first few hours, what do you do?
Two things I try to do. I'm not good at the first.
Okay.
Humor.
Okay.
I try to kind of get some levity into the situation if I can, just because it's so tense. So try to break it up a little bit. And then the other, I think, is, I mentioned earlier how you have leaders in your life that really influence you, and you say to yourself, oh, I want to go do that when I get an opportunity. The second thing I try to do is to not get too serious too fast about what has to happen in the business. Meaning, have an attitude that's kind of good nature, and we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Not get too serious too fast. Not make lists immediately within 2 hours of being there of what I got to run on, but to say together we'll figure this out, and that breaks the ice. I think it seems to break the ice, because at the beginning they're just trying to figure out, who the heck are you? What kind of person are you? What kind of, and that's not about what I used to do or my pedigree, and it's not about what I say I'm going to do necessarily. It's a bit about that, but it's mostly, do we feel like you're someone who is in the moment, present with us, understanding what we've been through, and is sincerely interested in figuring out how we go navigate to the next place?
Yeah, so we have someone here in chat. It is the complete opposite of the TV show 24.
Is that,
It
what
turned-
is that what he said? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't put my cheaters on today because I want to look younger. So
Yeah. Well, you're going to draw a chat in droves saying you want to look younger. We can go get your reading glasses. That'll be perfect.
Oh, is that another one of those? Oh,
No, that's not the boomer, but he'll show up here in a minute.
okay.
So yeah, it turns out that, some of the techniques used in 24, by like holding down people's hands and running a drill through them or other pseudo torture doesn't endear you to your new team.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. At least not the first day.
Yeah, when you're anti-terrorism on a 24-hour clock, that's
Right.
a little bit more the command and control you
Right,
talked
yeah.
about.
I think it's interesting. I personally think that being a tough leader in the wrong, not that you don't want to be tough, but being tough, I find it is kind of, this is going to be strong, but is a lazier way to lead because it's not hard.
Okay.
It's not hard to be tough, right? To intimidate or to push people. I mean, that doesn't take much imagination at all or intelligence. You can just do that with brute force.
Okay.
Moving a group of people together in some direction that we all are trying to get to in a nuanced way, in a way that has them feel like they're part of it, that's an interesting chess game or puzzle to figure out. And I think that takes more energy and more effort, and I think it's more effective. But I always have viewed the tough thing as when I see that tough leaders, and I won't mention them specifically in our political system, but I find it
I think
to be.
you just did, but move on.
I think it's not a difficult thing to do. It's not. I'm not impressed with that as a leadership set of skills. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, no. And here we have a comment. Take the team out for a round of golf. You can learn a lot about people on the golf course. I would say you can learn a lot about people almost anywhere.
Yeah.
Meaning, get them out of the office. My favorite is lunch or dinner.
Yeah.
Because when you share a meal with someone, it's very hard for people not to relate.
Yeah.
It's a different scenario.
So really specifically on this question, I often have them over for barbecues. We'll split Friday. Usually Friday is a lunch, and we'll just get out.
Okay, good.
We usually, we've done river rafting trips.
Yeah.
So we get out and have fun.
Good.
Yeah.
So, on Breaking the Ice, one thing I remember when I asked you to come on the show, I was telling you about a coworker at Amazon who had just struggled to enter a new team. And he went in pretty gung-ho. He wanted to learn, but the way he tried to learn was to ask people lots of questions. So he came in as the manager and then was asking a lot of questions. Now, you said lead with questions, but for him that went wrong. Mm-hmm. We talked a little about it. How are ways that could go wrong? And you may not be recalling, but...
Is this at Amazon?
This is at Amazon.
So people there expected you to just get going?
I think that's part of it, but we also talked about it's the interrogation. It's asking questions versus he got into, well, how do you do this? And how do you do that? And how does this work? And how does that work? So when you talk about asking a lot of questions,
the kinds of questions are around not specific, how do you do this, how do we do that, how do we do this. I can learn some of that stuff over time. It's more, who are you? What's your role? What should I be focused on? What do we need to be focused on? How interested are you in jumping in and helping me solve these problems? It's at a bit higher level.
Yeah. So since the chat's somewhat invisible to you, I will relay to you for fun that I was thinking this too. We have a comment, for real, I want Ken to be my boss now. You definitely sound like an ideal boss. I know you're not claiming perfection, but where do you feel, because you say, well, you want to solicit input, you want to get to know people, you want to take them to lunch. There's someone here says if lunch is involved, they're in. But where would you say you still have a growth area, or what's a weakness that you'd be transparent and say, like, I'm actually not where I want to be on this? You may lose your new virtual employee, but I doubt it.
There are so many areas. I think pausing before judging and evaluating, getting more information before I make a decision. I'm a bit quick to start to sort and put things in boxes, and I should probably take a little bit more time because I've learned that the initial box I put something in was wrong. Let's see here. Patience. I need to count to 10 more, generally.
Okay.
Generally.
Well,
Yeah.
I see we have a bunch of awesome questions here, so I want to jump to them because they're great. So the next one is, and we've touched on this a little bit, but what are the top 1 to 2 skills required to be a successful? And here it says interim CEO. You could also just look at it as CEO though. What are the for all we a lot of the folks in chat come here because they want to grow in their careers and ultimately they want to reach an executive level.
Right.
What do you think are the top couple skills?
I know this is going to be odd, but having perspective, meaning understanding when understanding that when you move up, you're trying to think about a broad set of things. So don't bite on an idea and hold on to it super strong. An idea, know when to let something go and when to fight for it. Right? So is figuring out when how important is it that you need to fight for something, or you save that for another day. Having a perspective on what the business is trying to get done and where everybody plays in making that happen. So the more you understand what the finance guys are doing and what their job is and what kind of reports do they produce, and taking a look at those and learning those, that's a good thing to learn. Look at the salespeople, understand how they manage their work. So to move up, having visibility about what people do in different roles is really helpful. You don't have to know it deeply, but have a sense of, I see how that job fits in with the overall direction of where the company's going. I think leading, being willing to identify something that isn't working right and figuring it out and fixing it, or finding a new opportunity that you think is worth doing and getting some people around you that agree and putting the case together and go and drive that to make happen. That shows you're leading. I think those are important things.
So it's a certain amount of decisiveness.
There is a bit of decisiveness in it. That's why it's this bigger picture thing.
It's a tough question. What 1 or 2 skills required to be a CEO? There's many required. I do think it was interesting. You pushed on the question. Bezos has 2 sayings I think relate to this. Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon. One of them he says is be willing to change your mind, right? That we have this cultural, you talked about powerful or strongman leaders. There's a thing when you're a strongman leader that if you change your mind, you're seen as flip-flopping or weak. And his point, I think, would be that actually it's a sign of strength to say, you know what, my past belief was wrong. I didn't have that right. I think one of the most powerful ways to earn trust with your team, as long as it doesn't turn out that you're wrong all the dang time, is to be willing to say, I was wrong about that.
Yeah.
Like, here's what we've learned. Here's what we're going to do differently. But, yesterday we had this data and we thought whatever. But today we learned there's a better way to do it and to be willing to change.
Absolutely.
And then the other way that gets phrased sometimes as a quick catchphrase is strong opinions weakly held. Does that work for you?
Yes, it does. Very much so. I love the team arguing about ideas. That's beautiful.
So that's another thing that not everybody in chat will have experienced is the environment, which I think is right. A good leader, you want your team to have a healthy level of debate, right? That I love military history. I was never in the military like Awesome Dave, but it's attributed, I think, to George Patton, who said, if everyone's thinking alike, nobody's thinking. And a bunch of people in the room who are just lining up behind you and being yes women and yes men is not actually. A weak leader loves that. A strong leader, a truly strong leader, wants people who challenge. We have another great question here I wanted to get to. What are the top few hallmarks of culturally successful and unsuccessful teams that you've come across in this role? So, like, there's the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Like, what would you say are the hallmarks of strong and challenged teams?
It's interesting. This difficult situation I mentioned actually had the strongest team of any that I was involved with, and they were all very early in their careers.
Wow. Well, this is a great story. It's getting better.
It was the most, they were totally, so the answer is when the team is accountable to each other. When the team is accountable to each other, there's nothing that isn't possible. If they're accountable to the boss, then everybody's trying to please the boss. But when they're accountable to each other, they hold themselves to the cultural norms of how they're going to make decisions or deal with conflict or deal with poor performance. And so I think the hallmarks of a great team is when they're accountable to each other. And so anything other than that can go frayed in a variety of ways. And so there's lots of ways that teams don't perform well, and it's usually the case that teams, people say if one mind is good, 4 minds are better. That's actually not often very true. But it can be.
Okay.
It can be. And so I guess that the key thing is accountability to each other, the idea that it's really safe to be yourself and to talk about stuff. There isn't a couple people who dominate the whole team, that everybody feels like this is a safe place to say what they think. Mm-hmm. That's super helpful. Those 2 things are happening. Like it's a safe place to be who you are and to say what you believe, and people are accountable to each other. You're going to go a long way.
Yeah.
In a good team.
This is a concept, part of this, what you've shared, is often called psychological safety.
Yeah.
Which means, am I safe in this environment to be myself, to share my thoughts, or am I going to get undermined, stuff used against me, and jumped on me? And if you don't have psychological safety, you're spending all your time maneuvering politically and trying to defend or protect yourself. And at the most simple level, if your fight or flight reflexes have been triggered in a workplace, and you're busy thinking about, am I appreciated, or what did he mean by that, you can't actually contribute. Your upper brain shuts off because you're in get away from the tiger that's going to eat me mode. And ideally, and I need to really improve on this. Yeah, nice. That darn amygdala. I have to work on pronouncing the Greek well.
That's right.
The hindbrain, the lizard brain. So one of the things I need to work on is, I've often said there's nothing as powerful as a gelled team, a team that's come together. But helping that team gel to where there's mutual trust and mutual accountability is super powerful. And though this is an old boomer book, if you want to read the perfect book on this, or a perfect book of what a gelled team looks like, there's a great book called The Soul of a New Machine, which was about building microcomputers. But it's about a team that came together to accomplish the impossible. It's also, there's a lot of sports books that talk about teams coming together. And I think there's a coach, John Wooden, that talks about bringing a team together. It's how the San Antonio Spurs run. It's how they're persistently able to compete without being the strongest individual players. And it's all about the team caring only about what makes each other better, not as much themselves. And so giving for the team. And that takes a high trust environment, because you can't give for the team if you think the other person's going to stab you in the back. So I agree. It was really fascinating. For those of you who weren't here earlier, I asked Ken in the opening, what's the hardest situation he ever went into? And he talked about a really hard situation, but now he's saying it was a relatively early in their career team, but they were tightly, they cared about each other and were committed to each other.
You know that expression, forged in fire?
Oh,
So they went through a fire together and they were forged. And I have to say that it was the most mature team of any team I've ever experienced in my career in terms of how they dealt with one another. And this is a long career.
All right.
And so it says you don't have to be around forever. It's around how you deal with each other.
which goes back to EQ, really,
Yes.
tying things all the way back to the earlier comment.
Yeah.
Okay, so another great question here, and we'll take just a couple more. So I do see chat talking about voting things up. We're going to just take a couple more. So if you have something, definitely get into our extension and vote on them. So the question here, all these situations you were dropped into, did they turn out positively? Was there one where you thought to yourself, I'm not sure how we're going to get to the other side of this one? And if so, what'd you do to make it? Oh, I see him smiling. So there's a story.
They all landed successfully with the next leader, who the team I think liked. So I mean that's
So you never had a crater chain the doors shut.
No, there was one where it was part of a large company, and the company said we're not going to continue that project.
Okay.
There was a second one that was the company got sold, but in a way that was a good outcome for the team, and they
Okay.
still are there and
Okay.
still working. And then the rest are still operating.
Great.
And knock on wood, they're doing okay.
So which one were you thinking though? Like, oh, this may not make it, or maybe that's all of them. But I'll let you pick. Excuse me.
The one that got sold, I feared would not make it because it was on the edge of being potentially shut down.
Okay. So like in bridge loans or some other difficult,
It just wasn't a profitable business.
not profitable. Okay. Yeah, I'll share my side here. I was once brought into a company, not exactly told that I was going to be doing a mess cleanup. So cleanup on aisle 5. And I share a story. It's really funny. A woman I'm now friends with came into my office my second day there, sat down with me and said, I know you're new here, but we've all talked and we just want to let you know we have very good work from home arrangements and we're keeping them. So extremely confrontational. You know, even though her words were polite, very confrontational. And she and I worked that out. But, you know, to have like the employee representative come lay down the law to me on my second day on the job was definitely walking into one that I didn't know how it was going to turn out.
Yep.
There's a lot of probably engineers and tech folks in the thread. I know some are. Another person on that team, I kept asking him, this was a few weeks later, I said, you seem to miss all of your deadlines. Like, what can you tell me about that? You're late on, you know, everything you say you'll do. And he said, well, so I've learned 2 things in my career. One of them is that estimating software is really hard. So I agreed with him on that. He said, the other one is the only way I've ever seen anything come in on time is people who work really long hours. And I'm not really doing that. And he wasn't with us much longer. He got the message and moved out on his own. But yeah, so clean up on aisle 5. Somebody likes that. How did I fix it? That's in chat asking. I fixed cleanup on aisle 5 by doing some cleanup. So like the guy who didn't want to work very hard and was transparent about it, I set a tone that said, well, and the same thing for the lady who had confronted me. I said, I am here. We're going to move forward. We're going to do what it takes to lead the business. Help me understand what that is. But then some set of us are going to go accomplish those things. And you can either be part of the team that's part of the success, or you can choose not to be. But I tried to build, once I got the team somewhat to what you had said, wanting to go in a direction and showed them that I was there to help, not just to remove their privileges or be tough, the team pulled together and we did a lot of good things. But you do have to be willing to remove cancers. And I guess with that, I would say, in any of these roles you went into, was there somebody that just couldn't get with the program?
Yeah, actually, in one of my early ones, the board said we have somebody in the business, a senior role, who the team does not like, and we can remove that person before you come in. And I said, no, don't do that. Because I don't know what the story is. Maybe he was right. I went in there and they were right. And so very quickly I had to let him go. Within a week I said, sorry, I thought that there may be another story here, but
there really isn't.
There isn't.
That's a hard conversation. Maybe we'll do a whole other stream on that. But yeah, part of cleanup on aisle 5 is the things that do need to be cleaned up. Like this one guy wasn't committed. He had to go.
And the earlier you do that, the better.
Yeah.
It's really if I come in and I have to do some cleanup, which is I try to get on that really quickly because everybody else sees that as progress.
Sure. Yeah. And
if you don't do anything, they're thinking, it's out with the new king, in with the new king.
Yeah, that's right. Meet the old boss or meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Right.
All right, cool. We'll do one or two more here. So next question is, how do you handle conflict? More so since you step in and take care of stuff at the top level and may have to battle out loyalty and alignment issues. Doesn't sound like you have those too much, but maybe you do. More generally, what about conflict?
Well, there's all kinds of conflict, and some of it is healthy, and some of it is not healthy.
How would you differentiate the two?
If we're arguing about what has to be done, in what order, for whom, that's healthy conflict. If we're getting personal and ascribing motivations to people that are negative, that's not healthy. And so let's argue about the ideas and assume good intent with each other. Now, if the evidence indicates that not everybody assumes good intent, that there are actually, right? If people are not playing fair or arguing fair, then it may be me or it may be the leader of that person. Somebody's got to address that. So I think there's all kinds of conflict. It's good to have intense kind of a conflict about the task you're trying to get done, but don't make it personal.
So beyond don't make it personal, if I find myself in a situation working for you or another leader, and I have strong opinions about something, how do I have productive conflict? In other words, what would you say as advice to somebody listening is the right way to stand up for something but not damage relationships or alienate people?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. It'd be great to have an example, right? Yeah, I expect that when people have, if you want people to have passion, you can't turn off the passion when it comes to them wanting to do different things than the business is doing now. I mean, you want that. The idea is, I'll give you a story. Many years ago, I was a first line manager for the first time, and there was this big branch meeting with 50 people in the room, and one of my employees stood up and really laid one out to the whole branch about how this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong, but not very constructively. It was kind of a vent. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm a new manager. How do I deal with this, And so later on, I grab him. How you doing? You were pretty intense about that. And I said, so I just want to make clear. Yeah, I bet you feel better. And he goes, oh, yeah, I feel a lot better. And I said, yeah, because I think that's what the goal was here for you. Because you were terrible in effectiveness. That was totally ineffective. But I bet you feel better. If you really wanted to be effective, I'm happy to help you figure out how to be effective, but that was not. So you have to decide, do you want to feel better or do you want to actually get something done?
Okay. So in terms of advice, that one thing is, are you talking to vent, which people need to vent, but vent to your friends or somebody else. or your boss in private.
Or come into and say, I just got to get something off my chest. Go, give it to me, right?
Yeah. Good boss will let you vent.
Occasionally. You don't want to make it a pattern, but yeah. Hopefully you've also come up with an idea to deal with that. But yeah, you got to separate the venting. I'm sorry.
No, that's completely true. But do you want to vent or do you want to get something done?
Yeah.
So last question we'll take here. It's got a lot of votes. How do you encourage a team to be accountable to each other rather than their boss or leader?
Well, I have to as the leader has to demonstrate that. Because if the leader says that, but then individually has everybody believe that individually they got to please the leader, then it doesn't matter what you say. So the encouraging a team to be accountable is the easy part. The behavior of the leader to let them do that is the harder part. And so don't say it unless you really mean it. And so specifically, how do you encourage them? They presumably we're going to align on what we're trying to get done in what time frame. If there is a conflict on the team, seek to encourage them and coach them on how they figure out how to solve it. And then if they can't, say, hey, I'm here, come in here, and you guys can yell at each other, and I'll give you my opinion about how you solve it. But hopefully you can try it yourself. So if there's, have them take the first whack at everything. Mm-hmm. What needs to change, what some new idea needs to be experimented with, right? However, if the agreement that we have about what the team's going to go get done is going to change as a result of that, I need to get back in the loop again. Okay. So you can't steer the boat off track because you're accountable to each other. You're still accountable to what we agreed the business is going to have you do.
So I think you have a good point there. A common way this gets broken is by a boss, and I've sometimes done this for sure, is a top-down imposition of a goal. Mm-hmm. Because the team can't be accountable to each other if I set the date. Right? Now, we can talk about the date it's needed by, and I can certainly say we need to accomplish this thing by the date, but the team's got to figure out then, if I specify too much of what we're going to do, there's no way they can be accountable to each other.
Yep.
Right? And the interesting thing here, going back to command and control, it is a lot faster to say, I need you to build this widget by this date.
But, for both the boss or the employee, it's much faster, also just as fast for an employee. Let's say the boss gives you something to do. I'm surprised that people don't immediately say, well, what's the priority of this? When do you feel it should get done by? And because most people want to please their boss and they run off and do it immediately, and the boss might think, that's a week is fine. Similarly, so when somebody asks you to do something, get an agreement on when it's due by. So they say, can you do it by next Friday? You say, I'll do it by next Wednesday. So you get that done. That way you have an agreement on it. Similarly, if you're the leader, you might as well ask them when they can get it done by, because maybe half the time they'll get it done in the time you want, in which case they owned it. And you don't even have to go to negotiation stage.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I take as faith that most people want to do good work, right? That people don't come to their jobs. We've talked about this before on other broadcasts. There are some environments where people are just coming to collect a paycheck, but most people want to do good work, and so they will try to please, and they will try to deliver. And if you give them that opportunity, they'll often over-deliver.
Yes.
So with that, we'll wrap it up for tonight. It's been great having Ken here as a guest.
Thank you.
Our next show will be Thursday, June 6th. We've brought up the military a few times tonight. And so I'll have to point out that June 6th is D-Day. And so we'll have Devin Nash here as a guest. We're going to talk about the book, Extreme Ownership, and some of our perspectives on ownership of career, ownership of outcomes, and what it means to have extreme ownership. So thank you all very much for coming. We appreciate the follows here and on YouTube. Please spread the word. Thank you. Racine for the big cheer. Always glad to have you here. One of our diehard followers, helps us cross-post to other sites. And with that, have a wonderful evening. Go out and make a great impact. And one day, you too can become a traveling itinerant CEO. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you.